All right, everyone, we are back. Make sure you have your cameras on. We are back. We're going to talk about encumbrances and liens. Marta, did you get the message I sent to you on WhatsApp? All right. This media, where are you? Nard, camera. Oh, there you go. Orphelia, camera. David's in. Nav, camera. Juan, camera. Nay, Sam, Alexis. Where are your cameras at? Come on. Recess is over. Come on. I'm back from the playground. There you go. All right. You got 4 people watching on YouTube. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat in the YouTube live. Your son's cracking up. Good. That's a good thing. All right. So we're going to talk about encumbrances and liens. This is actually very easy once you understand what this word means. Okay. So I mentioned yesterday a couple times about encumbrances, and I said that it means a cloud, right? But why does it mean a cloud? Because an encumbrance is a claim, an interest, or a benefit that somebody has on your property. So it limits the value of your property. So when we're talking about encumbrances, just like a cloud over you, right, limits what you can and cannot do with the property. So there's different types of encumbrances, right? There's physical encumbrance, usage encumbrance, and then there's liens. Every time you see liens is a type of encumbrance because it limits your property. But every time you see liens, you have to think about money. See, the other types of encumbrances are claims against the property as well, but a lien, like taxes, mortgage, judgments, right, are financial claims against the property. So every time you see lien, think about money. So the moment you're reading the question, very simple. The moment you're reading the question, you're going to look for the answer that talks about money, right? Sometimes the question could be, all of these are examples of liens except. There's going to be 3 answers that are money related, then 1 that's not, right? So again, lien, financial claim. It's the easiest one to remember here. So encumbrances, clouds. So let's start right here. An encumbrance is an interest in and right to real property that limits the legal owner's freehold estate. So limits what you can and cannot do with the property. In effect, an encumbrance is another's right to use or take possession of a legal owner's property, or to prevent the legal owner from enjoying the full bundle of rights in the estate. So an encumbrance does not give you legal title to the property, right? An encumbrance does not give you legal title to the property, but it gives you a claim, potential claim to title. So if you default on an encumbrance like a lien, right, they might be able to enforce the lien by taking it to court and foreclose on you, right? So it doesn't give anybody legal title directly, right? And it does not give the right to possession either, and is therefore a lesser interest than the owner's freehold interest. For that reason, encumbrances are not considered estates. All right, let me just pause for a second and make a comment again. If you guys are distracted, this does not count towards your hours. If you guys are not paying attention, this does not count for the hours. If you guys are not here on time, it cuts your hours. If you're not on camera, it cuts your hours. So I'm just putting it out there for those that have distractions in the house. Okay, because if you were here in class, you have no distractions, right? And if you were here in class, I have a whip, so I'll make sure that you guys would be paying attention anyway. Right, but at a distance is tough. So just putting it out there. It's only for your success, not mine. I already have my license, so just letting you know. All right. So where were we? Encumbrances are not considered estates because estate means ownership and possession of the property, right? We got that covered already from yesterday, right? However, an encumbrance can lead to the owner's loss of ownership of the property because we can enforce the encumbrance. Now, easements and liens are the most common types of encumbrances. An easement, such as utility easement, right? A lien, such as a tax lien, right? These both enable the use of the property or can be placed on the property's title. Sorry, student of mine just passed the state exam. You guys are on the WhatsApp group. So awesome. I love these notes, right? Anyway, so my daughter gets a A+ in reading. One of my students passes. Can't get better than that. That's it. Just made my day. All right. A lien such as a tax lien can be placed on the property's title, thereby restricting the owner's ability to transfer clear title to another property. So if you guys remember, I did ask, if you have a mortgage on the property, right? Let's say $300,000, but the property's worth $280,000. Can you sell the property? You can, right? But you're going to pay $20,000 to get the house sold. So instead of receiving money, you're paying to sell. It limits what you can do or not do. And because you have to pay to sell, how long is it going to be on the market? Probably a very long time because it's tough to sell. You want to have the top dollar, right? You guys understand? So an easement or a lien limits your ability to sell freely, okay? So to transfer clear title, it might restrict you. All right, the two general types of encumbrances are those that affect the property's use and those that affect legal ownership. So value and transfer. That again, please. I don't know what you want me to say. I just make sure you write what you want me to say. What do you mean, never mind? Come on, tell me what you want me to say. Say again what? Regarding liens? Okay. What I was saying regarding liens. What I was saying regarding liens is that they restrict your ability to transfer clear title. So like I was saying is, if you owe $300,000 on the mortgage, right? The property value, right? Property value is $280,000. Can you sell the property? And I said yes, but you're negative $20,000. Right? You're negative $20,000. So it's either you do a short sale when you negotiate with the bank to sell for less than what is owed, and that still also takes a long time. So it's not easily transferable, right? Still takes a long time, right? Or you're selling it for $280,000, knowing that you still have to pay $20,000 out of your pockets to the mortgage company, right? So you're paying to sell. So all we're trying to say with easements or liens, that they restrict or limit your transferability. Because look, if you had no mortgage, right, then you have no deficiency. Can you sell the property at any time without any hindrance? Yeah, right? If you have no mortgage and the property's worth 280, you can put it on the market and maybe sell it tomorrow, right? But if there's a mortgage, then you need to pay off the mortgage in order to be able to sell. How can you pay off the mortgage if the property is worth less? You understand what I'm saying? So that limits, again, it's a lien. This is a lien, right? That limits what you can do with a property. You might think twice before putting it for sale. And by the way, guys, as realtors, it's our job to ask, right? Not just accept, hey, I want to sell my property for 280. Great. That's what the property is worth, right? For us, is great. A seller that's conscious about market value. That's perfect. Barely ever happens, right? But then you need to ask questions. Do you have any mortgages on the property or any liens on the property, right? More often than not, you're going to find out that they have no idea what's against the property. They know the balance on their mortgage, but they forget there's a second mortgage. Or they forget there's unpaid water bill. Or they forget there's a judgment against the property that they knew about, or maybe they didn't even know about, right? So there's always surprises. If you owe more, if there's enough liens that are worth more than what the property is actually worth, it makes it very difficult to sell. You're going to have to settle either with the lien holders, settle for less, or you're going to settle out of pocket by putting the difference. So again, all we're trying to say is that the encumbrances affect the property's use and value, transfer, ownership, all of that. Okay? Okay? Good. All right. So here you go. General types of encumbrances. So there are encumbrances that restrict the owner's use by others' rights to use. These are called easements, encroachments, licenses, and deed restrictions. We're going to go over these in a little bit. These affect your use because others have the right to use. Okay? These are all categories where people have rights to your property somehow. Okay? Restrictions on ownership, value, or transfer, right? Pretty much are financial claims, so liens. And deed conditions, if you guys remember life estates, for instance, right? The property's yours as long as you're alive. So it affects the transfer of the property or the valid property, or even ownership in the future, right? So these are the only ones that affect the ownership. Let's talk about easements. Easement. Right to use. Okay? Right to use. Right to use another's property or someone else's property. Okay? So the best example I can give you, and the easiest one, even though we're going to look at it in a second, is a shared driveway. If you guys have a shared driveway, that means both neighbors share half of the driveway, right? Can you tell your neighbor to cut the car in half and you only use their half? You cannot. It's a shared driveway. That means that they use part of your driveway to get to the back of their house, right? So you cannot cut the car in half. They're going to use the full car on both halves of the house, right? And you the same. So in a shared driveway, you have the right to use your neighbor's half and they have the right to use your half. So there's an easement. It's the right to use another's property, okay? So that's what easement is. There's different type of easements. There's easement of pertinence and easement in gross. Easement of pertinence, that means there's two adjacent parcels of land, so adjacent land. Okay? And easement in gross is the simple right to use. So it does not have to be adjacent, okay? They don't have to be together. So it's easement of pertinent, that means two properties are together, attached. Easement in gross is it's not attached, but I have the right to use. Okay, so I'll explain that better in a second. Let's start again with what an easement is. It's an interest that somebody else has in your property and gives them the right to use your property. So again, like the shared driveway. The receiver of the easement is the benefited party. The giver of the easement is the burdened party. So in the shared driveway, right, if your neighbor is using your part of the driveway, then they benefit from it, and you're the one that's burdened by it. They have the burden of allowing or having to allow them to use your half, and vice versa. If you're using their half to drive your car through, right, then you are the benefit party, and they are the burden party on their half. The essential characteristics of easements include the following. An easement must involve the owner of the land over which the easement runs and another non-owning party. So one cannot own an easement over your own property, right? So for easements to exist, right, you have to have two properties adjacent, for instance, where you are the owner of property A and somebody else is the owner of property B. Otherwise, you will be the same thing as looking at your legs and saying, hey, left leg, could you please move in order for the right one to move? It's your legs regardless, right? You're going to give yourself permission to do something, right? Makes no sense. So you need to be the owner of your property and somebody else the owner of the property next to yours, or if it's easement in gross, the owner of a different property. So an easement pertains to a specified physical area within the property boundaries, and an easement may be affirmative, allowing the use, such as the right-of-way, or negative, prohibiting the use, such as an airspace easement that prohibits you from obstructing an owner's ocean view. So we talked about this when somebody purchases air rights, right? You cannot build above a certain height, so you're restricted, right, by your neighbor's property or the rights that they purchased. The two basic types of easement of pertinent are easement of pertinent and gross. Pertinent means, as I said, there's two adjoining properties and one is owned by another party. The property enjoying the usage is called a dominant tenement or dominant estate, and the property containing the physical easement itself is called the servient tenement. So you must serve. Okay? Very simple to remember. Okay? Very simple to remember. Dominant is the guest, servient is the host of the benefit. So if you invite me to your house, right? Let's say you're having a party and you invite me to your house, right? When I go there, right, I am the guest. So as a guest, usually we expect to be served, right? Served how? Sometimes I'm not talking about food, but it's the fact that you open the door, you're already serving me. You're allowing me to benefit by getting into your house and maybe using the amenities of your house. So if I need to go to the bathroom, I'll tell you, hey, can I please go to the bathroom, right? You are the host. If you allow me, I'm dominating, I'm the guest, right? And you are allowing me. You're serving me with whatever amenities you have in your property, right? If it's food, obviously you're serving. and I'm dominating as I'm enjoying or benefiting from it. Does that make sense? So, in a simple example, if I have the right to go through your property, right, to get to the back of my house, so even in a shared driveway again, I'm going to show you some examples in a second, but even in a shared driveway again, when I'm using the shared driveway, I'm dominating on your half of the property. Like on mine, it's mine. But I'm dominating on your half to go through to the back of the house. And you're serving it, right? You're allowing me to go through because it is my right to share driveway. If you are using the driveway to get to the back of your house, then you are dominating on my half. And I'm serving you. I'm allowing you. I'm the guest on my half. Does that make sense? That's simple enough? Okay. So, easement of pertinent, and we have a few figures here in a second. But easement of pertinent means attached to. Okay, so like I said, it has to be two properties are attached for easement of pertinent to exist. I'm going to skip this, and we're going to go to the figure. So easement of pertinent. If you guys see here, there's three properties. There's lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, right? If you guys see here, this one is the servient. Why is this the servient? Let me show you. Lot 1 needs to follow this path to get to the public road. Okay? So lot 1 uses, see the boundary lines are here. So lot 1 uses part of lot 2's driveway. So if lot 1 is using part of lot 2's driveway to get to the public road, then lot 1 is dominant. They're using it, right? And lot 2 has to allow it. Okay? So this is the way it was created. It has to allow lot 1 to go through to get to the public road. And here is the same thing, right? Come from here, it's no longer my property line. Now I'm on lot 2 property line, but I need to get to the public road. So I dominate on this particular portion right here. So we are dominant when it comes to this section right here. This is where lot 1 and lot 3 dominate, because this red area right here belongs to lot 2. Okay, so we dominate and lot 2 serves. Okay, this is also called an easement by necessity, right? An easement by necessity, because there's no other way. I mean, maybe lot 3 can find another way to go through, but lot 1 has no access. They're landlocked, so they have no access to the public road, which is a necessity to get to the public road. Right? So different types of easements. Again, easement by necessity means you are landlocked, and you cannot deny me the usage of your property if it's the only way to get to the public road. So I have a right. So again, every time you see easement, it's a right. Being a right, it cannot be revoked unless we have a mutual agreement to create or terminate the easement. Okay? All right, next we have party wall easement. Now, what is a party wall? What is a party wall? So a party wall is a wall that separates the parties. What does that mean? Well, here's a wall. This is my unit, the school, right? From this wall on is the real estate. So the school is separate from the real estate, separate ownerships, right? This is this New Direction School LLC. Over there on the other side of this wall is New Direction Realty LLC, right? So these are separate ownerships. Now, I must maintain this half of the wall, just like a shared driveway. I must maintain my half, right? in support of their half. So a party wall is a right that the other side has, right, on my half, and the right that I have on their half. Why? Because if I damage this wall on this side, it could also damage or collapse their side. Does that make sense? So a party wall easement is where one owner has the right on the other owner's half, and the other owner has a right on my half, pretty much for support. So they have to maintain and repair the wall because it's the support of my wall. Okay? Questions? Any questions? Drop them in the chat right now. If you're watching on YouTube, if you have questions regarding party walls, let me know. Is a fence a party wall? So it could be a party wall. Usually it's more for townhouses, condominiums, right? So a fence is not really considered a party wall, more like a property's limits. Let's put it like that, right? And the only reason why I say this is because technically, in the survey, this is the line that separates the properties, as an example. And technically, the fence is going to be somewhere here. There has to be some space, right? There has to be, by law, some space here. And on this side, the same, right? So it's really not attached, okay? And then this fence belongs to my side, that fence belongs to yours. So it's not a direct separation of the property lines. Is it personal? What, did I offend you? I mean, we can take this personal. I don't know. What do you want to do? You want to take this outside? I don't know. What is personal? I didn't get the question. I'm sorry. The fence? Well, the fence is real property because it's attached to the land. So it's real property, not personal. For personal, to be personal, it had to be movable. Sorry, I just like to mess with the way you guys ask questions. Don't ever get offended. I just like to have fun. Okay? And I like to pick on people. Yeah, I'm a bully. I admit it. Yep. I know I know what she asked. I just had to mess with her. Get used to it. It's gonna be a very long 4 weeks. Get used to it. Some people can't get enough and they keep on coming back. I don't know why, but yeah, I'll make it tough for you guys. All right, so easement in gross. In gross, okay, this is detached property, so it's not attached like easement of pertinent, right? It's the simple right to use, okay? And we're gonna find these mainly like utility companies, right? That's the easiest one that I can give you as an example. There's more examples, but utility companies have easement in gross, right? Because utility companies, they don't need permission. They're not owners of property, but they can use your property for specific purposes, right? Which is for maintenance of power lines, maintenance of sewer lines, water lines, and so on, right? So easement in gross is a simple right to use somebody else's property. So Easement in gross is a personal right that one party grants to another to use the grantor's real property. The right does not attach to the grantor's estate. It involves only one property and consequently does not benefit any property owned by the easement owner. There are no dominant or servant estates in an easement in gross. Easement in gross may be personal or commercial. Okay? And here's the example. So if it's a commercial easement in gross, it's the utilities. So here's a public road, here's lot A, and utility companies, they have the rights to the properties, right? Personal easements is we belong to a community that happens to have a lake. But for me to get to the lake, I need to go, look, I'm lot B right here, right? For me to get to the lake, I need to get through this path right here. This path happens to be on property A. So I'm using this right of way all the way to the lake. Again, because we are in a community where the lake belongs to the community, for instance, I need to use your property in order to benefit from what belongs to the community. Okay, so easements in gross. I am not close to your property, or I'm sorry, I'm not attached to your property. I'm separated by the public roads, but I have the right to the lake. Okay, so personal easement or commercial easement. Any questions there? So far, so good, right? Easy? Easements are easy so far? Great. So, of course, you already know when you start asking, Bruno, I see you're asking if it's easy so far, that means things are going to get complicated, right? And the answer is yes. So, here we go. We're going to talk about easement by prescription. Let's confuse you guys a little bit. Easement by prescription. If someone uses another's property as an easement without permission, for a statutory period of time and under certain conditions, a court may give the user the easement right by prescription, regardless of the owner's desires. So what we're saying basically is, I don't need your permission to use your property, and if you don't complain about my usage, like if I'm using your property, if you don't complain about it, I can go to court and say, hey, Your Honor, I've been using it for X amount of years, as mandated by the state laws. I'm entitled to keep on using it. I cannot be barred or stopped from using it. So pretty much the owner, after a certain period of time, if the owner does not tell me to stop or allow me to continue, after a certain period of time, the owner can never stop me again from using it. All right? That's called easement by prescription. Now, for a prescriptive easement to be granted, I'm going to give you different names for this in a little bit. For a prescriptive easement to be granted, the following circumstances must be true. So it has to be adverse and hostile. That means, you know what a hostile takeover is, right? I don't have permission, but I'm taking over. Adverse to the owner's title. That means that my name was never on the legal title either. Okay? Open and notorious use. That means everybody sees what I'm doing. The owner knows what I'm doing. If they don't know, it is presumed to have known of the use, right? Because any owner, right, should know what happens to their properties, or should have somebody overseeing their properties. There must have been continuous use. So if the prescriptive period, for instance, is 20 years, I cannot use it for 1 year, stop for 5, and then come back. No, it has to be a continuous 20-year use. So a prescriptive easement or easement by prescription is also called adverse possession, okay, or also known as squatter's rights. And I call it abandonment claim. Because for an easement by prescription to exist, that means that the land is sometimes vacant, or even if it's not, you see the usage happening and you really don't say anything. So you abandoned your right to claim. Think about it this way. If you drop $100 on the floor, right? Drop $100 on the floor. It's the example I give for the past 4 years or 5 years. So if you drop $100 on the floor and you keep on walking, right? And somebody else comes up and sees $100, right? Let's say you saw $100 on the floor. What are you guys going to do? You're going to grab the $100 and wave and see, hey, did anybody lose $100? You're going to yell out, did anybody lose $100? Of course not, because everybody will come and claim it, right? So what do? You hold on to the money, see if anybody comes back. At least that's the right thing to do, right? You give a little bit of time, right? If anybody shows up, hey, did you see $100 here? All right, fine. Yeah, it's this person's, right? Because nobody's going to claim $100 if they don't know it had dropped, right? But if nobody shows up, it was abandoned. If it was abandoned, finders, keepers. Simple rule. Finders, keepers. Here's the same thing. If a property is deemed vacant, right, and you're occupying the property, right, as long as it's adverse, hostile, so you are not a tenant, it's not like you were allowed to be there, right? So adverse, hostile, open and notorious, so everybody sees it, and it's a continuous use for the prescriptive period, and nobody shows up until the end of that period, and every state has different time periods, right? Then the owner clearly abandons and allows the squatter to claim what's called adverse possession or easement by prescription. You guys with me on this? Good? Right? Not bad, right? And it's legal. Okay? I call it also legally stealing somebody else's property. It's legal. Every country in the world has a law regarding adverse possession. Every single country. Okay? Portugal, for instance, 25 years. That's right. Unless, and I'm going to show you this in a different chapter, unless you do one little thing that you can reduce from 25 years to 2 years. So you can literally take over somebody else's property, legally, take over, not literally, legally, take over somebody else's property within 2 years. So if you meet these, and then you find another golden nugget along the way, I'll tell you when we get to that chapter, you could go from the prescriptive periods to statutory default. We'll talk about that. How long does the property have to be abandoned before claiming it? So it depends on the state that you're in. So in Florida, 6 years. Texas could be as little as 5 years or as much as 15 years. In New Jersey, 20 or 30 years, depending on the type of property. So, and again, every state has their own rules regarding adverse possession. And by the way, they also have rules and procedures. So you cannot just go into a property. That's called breaking an entry. Okay, and you'll be arrested on the spot. What you can do is research about adverse possession and the procedures in the state that you're trying to apply for adverse possession. Okay, and then you can go ahead and look for abandoned properties and take over. Or another way to do it, not to claim the whole property, but another way to do it is, I always give the same example. I mean, have you guys ever seen or heard stories about that sweet old lady that's always planting the flowers, right? Like it's your driveway, right? Separated by a bed of flowers, right? And she keeps on planting and keeps on getting closer and closer to your driveway, right? And now it's on your driveway, right? Because it's not concrete, so it keeps on going and going and going and going. And you see it and it looks so great. I mean, she really has a gift. Amazing flowers. How did they survive the way she does it? It's amazing. Well, after 20 years, guess what? That sweet old lady can claim the whole area that she's been working on slowly. So another way to do it is just slowly encroaching onto somebody else's property. And that's another one we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's called encroachment, which is illegally extending over somebody else's property. If after the prescriptive period of whatever state, if that after the prescriptive period, you do not say, hey, wait a minute, can you take those flowers out of there? Right? I didn't give you permission. Or if you specifically grant permission, that pretty much terminates the easement. Okay? So giving specific permission will terminate the easement by prescription. But if you don't, they can claim if they want. Crazy, right? Your neighbor looks so sweet, right? And then here all of a sudden, they taking over your property. All right, eminent domain. So this is a different type of easement. It's where the government can claim either part or the whole property. If they claim only part of the property, it's an easement. If they claim the whole property, it's no longer an easement because you don't have right to the property. The property was condemned altogether. So if they take a portion of the property and cause that portion to be sold for a greater good. So a typical example of a town's condemnation of private land is to create a new municipal sewer system. Or sometimes, like I have one right here on Route 21, I almost bought the land back in 2005. I bought the land until I figured out what they were trying to do with Route 280, right? So they created new entry for the Route 280, and that would cut half of the land that I was going to buy. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to pay, I think at the time it was 1.6 that we were going to buy the land for. We're not going to buy this for 1.6 if we're going to get half of the land. And the seller knew, that's the worst part. The seller knew that he was about to lose land. He was trying to sell it without telling people what was about to happen. Luckily, that same year, I learned about something we're going to talk about in the next couple chapters, which is called master plan. So every city has a master plan that says what are the developments happening in the area. So when I was looking at that property, when I learned about the master plan, at the same time, luckily, then I saw that a portion of that land was going to be taken. That's what made me walk away from the deal. And I think he lost, well, he was still able to sell, but instead of selling for 1.6, I think he sold for 900 or 1 mil, something like that. So he lost 600,000 or something in the deal. And he could have gotten sued if he sold it to me knowing about the issue. Okay? How often is the master plan updated? It depends. It depends on the development in the town. So in a township like Newark, it will be updated way faster than some townships that haven't developed in 20 years. Right? So the last update to Newark, it was in 2012, I believe. Right? And there should be another one coming up soon. But there's no specific timeline for updates. It depends on how many new developments are being implemented, right? And how is that going to change the structure of the town? So there are a couple of new developments that are. So one of the things they do is amendments or additions, addenda to the master plan instead of recreating a new one. So I know there's a new one that's going to be added soon. This year has to be added because they're here in Newark, for instance. They're the whole South Newark. There's a particular section there that's going to be completely revamped. So they need to update it. All right, as soon as the plans are approved. All right, moving on, we have easement termination is simple. I'm going to skip this. You guys can read it. It could be by express right, merger, we bought the property, and so on. As far as encroachments are illegal extensions. What is this? Illegal extension over somebody else's property. So let's go back to the fence. If I have a fence right here, right? I have a fence right here, but I don't like this fence. I want to have a tall white vinyl fence, right? I want it tall because I want privacy. I don't want to see my neighbor. I don't want them to see me, right? So I remove the fence and I move it 1 foot over. The moment I move 1 foot over, I'm now encroaching onto my neighbor's property. Okay, so encroachment is when we're illegally extending our property into somebody else's property. So it's unauthorized or illegal physical intrusion into another's property. The problem with encroachments is that if nobody complains after the statutory period, we can claim the property. So if I put the fence 1 foot over, after 20 years, for instance, if that's the statutory period in the state, after 20 years, I can say, Your Honor, my fence has been here for 20 years. This piece of land that used to belong to my neighbor should now belong to me, right? So if you don't see it, if you see it and you don't say anything, you lose it. Okay? So encroachments can cause infringements on the rights of the trespassed owner and may diminish the property's value, particularly when the property is to be sold. Encroachments often do not appear to be on the property's title records, so a survey might be required to detect or demonstrate the existence of an encroachment. So that's why surveys are very, very, very important, because that fence might be on your property, not on the neighbor's property. All right, so always when you buy a property, make sure you have a survey. Very, very important. Otherwise, the encroachment may become an easement by prescription or adverse possession, squatter's rights, whatever you want to call it. License. Licenses are permissions or privileges. You can write privilege as well. So it's either permission or privilege. So before I move forward here, under easements, we have rights. Okay, the right to use somebody else's property. But a license, guys, do you guys have a driver's license? Raise your hand if you have a driver's license. Great. Who does that license belong to? Let me know in the chat. Who does the license belong to? If you have a driver's license, who does it belong to? The state. I thought it was yours. But yeah, it belongs to the state. Anything that's a license belongs to somebody else. So they're allowing you or permitting you to do something. Let's say state of New Jersey, if you reach 12 points on your license, so infringements on your license, what can happen to the license? Taken away, revoked, suspended, all that good stuff, because the license is not yours. It belongs to somebody else. So in that same thought pattern, let's go here. A license can be revoked. Okay? So a license, for instance, is I allow you to park on my driveway. Right? If you're my tenant, I'm going to say, yeah, why don't you, just park on my driveway, it's fine. But I can call you 5 minutes later. If it was not specifically stated in the lease, I can call you 5 minutes later and say, hey, come back, get your car out. Right? If it was not specifically stated in the lease, a license can be revoked at any time. All right? So, remember, easements are rights in somebody else's property. Encroachments are illegal extensions or unauthorized use of somebody else's property. Licenses are permissions that can be revoked to use somebody else's property. Okay, so these are the distinctions between these three. Okay, as far as deed restrictions, really quick, you guys remember yesterday when I said the property is yours as long as you're alive? That was a life estate, right? That restriction is going to be written on the deed itself. When I told you yesterday, and by the way, those that started today, You can watch the class replay on the student portal for yesterday, right? Or you can go to YouTube live, I'm sorry, to the YouTube channel. But, and then ask me questions. There we go. But the other one was, hey, you can use the property. I'll sell it to you as long as you use it for hospital purposes. Right? If you remember this one as well, use it for hospital purposes. So there's a restriction that you can only use this property for this particular condition. So if you don't, then that restriction, right, which is also an encumbrance on your property, that restriction could make you lose the property. Or subdivisions, condos, they all come with these restrictions. They'll be always stated in the deed. Okay? One thing to remember is that deed restrictions are placed by private parties. So deed restrictions from the seller to the buyer, from the subdivider to the whole community or subdivision. Okay? These are just some examples of deed restrictions. Okay? Again, a private party who wants to control the quality and standards of a property can establish a deed restriction. Deed restrictions take precedence over zoning ordinances if they are more restrictive. And deed restrictions typically apply to land use, size and type of structures that may be placed on the property, minimum cost of structures, engineering, architectural, aesthetic standards, and setbacks or specific standards of construction. So I can put all these conditions on you. I can say that in this subdivision, all the lots here must measure at least 2 acres. Every single lot, at least 2 acres. So that means you can only build one house for every 2 acres. That's a deed restriction placed on the entire subdivision. Okay? Again, deed restrictions take precedence over zoning ordinances. So if the city's restriction is, for instance, the city says the minimum we require is 1/2 acre, right? Then the subdivision restriction, which is 2 acres, is more restrictive. Because again, in 1/2 acre, that means for the same 2 acres, we could have built 4 homes. But here it's limiting us or restricting us to 1 home per every 2 acres. So this one prevails. Okay, so deed restrictions can be enforced or be superior to township or zoning ordinances or restrictions, right? If they are more restrictive than the city's ordinances, okay? All right, liens. Again, if you guys have any questions, just stop me and ask the question, okay? Liens. Liens, you guys already know by now. Liens involve money. So liens are financial claims. There's different lien types. There's different lien priorities, right? And the lien priorities are established by who's the superior lien and who's the junior lien. So in the event of foreclosure, things are paid out based on priority, okay? In the event of foreclosure, things are paid out based on priority. So a lien is a creditor's claim, so it's a financial claim against personal or real property as a security for a debt of the property owner. If you don't pay, we enforce the lien, therefore we foreclose on the property to satisfy the debt, right? So very simple. You don't pay your taxes, you can go through tax foreclosure. You don't pay your mortgage, you go through mortgage foreclosure. You don't pay a judgment on construction, there'll be a foreclosure as well because of that judgment, right? So anything that you don't pay, so again, it has to do with monies, everything that you don't pay could subject your property to a foreclosure, okay? On the next page, liens have the following legal features, right? And because liens are encumbrances, they're not estates. If they're not estates, they don't give the right to possession or ownership. The only one that might give a right to possession or ownership, kinda, is a mortgage lien, right? Because if you are in, and we'll talk about this in a different chapter, if you are in a title theory state, then when you get a mortgage or when you apply for financing to buy the house, the title is given to a third party already. So this is the same thing as you having a car. If you don't pay your car, what do? They come in repo. They don't have to go to the court. They just come in, take your car, because the title is not under your name. It's under a third party until you finish paying it off. Once you finish paying it off, they give the title back to you, right? In some states, that's the same thing they do. They give the title to a third party while you're paying the mortgage. Once you finish paying it off, they release the title back to you. So this is the only exception when it comes to liens. But liens do not convey ownership. That means a lien holder, mortgage company, construction company that wasn't paid, or a tax, they don't have ownership until they enforce foreclosure. What they have is called equitable title, which we'll talk about tomorrow. The lien attaches to the property. So lien is against the property, never against the property owner. The lien is against the property. And you have to remember there's two things. There's the personal debt, which is the obligation to pay, and there's the lien. The lien is your house is the collateral, and if you don't pay on the debt, we will foreclose on the collateral. Okay, so there's two things there. You can sell the property to somebody else, but the lien stays unless it was paid off and released. You guys understand? So I can sell the property to Danny, right? My property, and my property has, let's say, $500,000 worth of liens, right? So Danny, you're the new owner of the property. As long as you pay the mortgage, we're good, right? You'll never lose the property. It was under my name, right? But he's the new owner. So you'd think, well, if he's a new owner, then he doesn't have to pay the mortgage. Well, the thing is, again, the lien, if it was not released, the lien is against the property, not the property owner, not Danny, not me, against the property. If Danny does not pay, or if I do not pay, they still take the house and enforce it as if it was me. Okay? So liens attached to the property, not to the property owner. Okay? A property may be subjected to multiple liens, right? First mortgage, second mortgage, tax liens, construction liens, so on. A lien terminates on payment. So the only way to release a lien is when there's a payoff of the lien and recording of documents that satisfy, that say, hey, there's no longer a lien. The debt was paid, so the property is now free and clear of any liens. All right, next we have what's called voluntary and involuntary liens. Voluntary and involuntary liens. Quick question. Forget real estate for a second. What is something that's voluntary? What does voluntary mean? The word voluntary, what does it mean? You know. Sam, forget real estate. That's what I said. What does the word voluntary, word itself? You are willing. You choose to do it. Yes, you're willing to do something. Exactly. So voluntary, you want it. What about involuntary? Obviously, it's the opposite. You're being forced, right? So voluntary, you want to. Involuntary, being forced to. So now talking about liens, there are voluntary liens and involuntary liens. A voluntary lien is something you asked for, like a mortgage. You went to the bank and you asked for money, right? And they said, we'll give you money as long as we have a security for the house. Right? So they put a lien on the house until you pay off the money. So it's a voluntary lien you ask for. Involuntary liens, it's something that was placed against your property that you did not want. What is the most common involuntary lien? Real estate taxes. Did anybody ask for taxes? Raise your hand if you asked for taxes. No. So you're being forced to pay taxes. Child support is also an involuntary lien. It's also, IRS is also an involuntary lien. Nobody wants it. Okay. All right, so then we have general and specific liens. So hold on to that thought, Sam. We have general and we have specific liens. A general lien is one that can affect any and all real and personal property. So all your properties can be affected. A specific lien is against one parcel of land specific. So a general lien, you have property A, you have property B, right? You have your car, you have your checking account, your 401k, your driver's license, your passport, your tax returns, all that stuff. A general lien will affect everything you have. A general lien will affect everything you have. So Sam wrote child support. That's one of those general liens that go after everything you have. Okay? Income taxes, so federal income taxes is another general lien. Judgments for medical bills or collections, those are general liens. Okay? Where a specific lien like a mortgage only affects one property. It never affect the other. So if you stop paying on mortgage A, the only property that you can lose is property A. You understand? So specific liens are specifically against one parcel. They cannot come after all your properties. That's the difference between general and specific liens. Okay? So a specific lien attaches to a single item of real or personal property and does not affect the other property owned by the debtor. Good? All right. Next thing we have is superior or inferior liens. Superior, right? It's like the pecking order of distribution in case of foreclosure. So superior liens, it's the highest ranking lien, and they receive the first proceeds from foreclosed and liquidated securities. Okay? The lien with the lowest priority is the last in line. So first in time, first in line, for instance. But how do we establish this priority? First off, figure out if it's superior or if it's junior. And then the second part is, when was it recorded? So these are the ways we figure out who gets paid first in the event of foreclosure. Okay? It's figuring out if it's superior or if it's a junior lien, and then when it was recorded. So for that we have, very simply, superior liens. These are the ones that are going to get paid first no matter what. Okay? These are the ones that are going to get paid first no matter what. And if you guys look at all of them, they're all related to taxes. So municipal taxes, and the only other thing that is addressed here is 3 and 4, is estate or inheritance taxes, right? So this is somebody died and you inherited, whether it's federal or state, right? But generally, the most common ones are these. Real estate taxes, in the state exam question, if you see it, real estate taxes always get paid first. So there might be a question, for instance, that asks which one of these is the prior lien, or which one of these has to get paid first, right? And one of the answers says current tax bill or current property tax bill. The moment you guys see current, usually in your mind is going to be like, well, if it's current, and it does not have to be paid, right? You have to understand, tax bills are perpetual. So if it's not paid off, it's constantly a new bill coming up every single year, right? So when they say current tax bill, that means there's an open bill that needs to be paid. It's not defaulted, but it's open, needs to be paid. So taxes, remember this. Who gets paid first? Taxes, always. Everything else is based on date of recording. Very, very important. Everything else is based on date of recording. So junior liens could be federal income tax liens, state corporate income tax, so anything that's income is a junior. State intangible tax, judgment liens, mortgage liens, vendors liens, mechanics liens. All right, all of these are paid based on when they were recorded. So again, first in time, first in line. So if you got here first and said, hey, here's my flag, here I stand, and somebody comes later, right? Then they're second to you. So in the event of foreclosure, the first mortgage or the first one to record gets paid first, after taxes, of course. Okay? So guys, in the event of foreclosure, who gets paid first? Let me know in the chat. In the event of foreclosure, who gets paid first? Good. Who gets paid after taxes? First in line. Very good. The one that's recorded. Yes, perfect. All right. So everything I just said is right here. The rule is that the earlier the recording date, the higher the priority. Perfect. There's only one exception, which is mechanics lien or construction lien. Okay. The only exception to the first in time, first in line, right, is the construction lien. Okay, because a construction lien is retroactive. Why is a constructive lien retroactive? Because if you don't pay me the work that I've done on your house, right, then I'm going to have to sue you to get paid. A lawsuit could take 3 years. In 3 years, you could have gotten a second mortgage, a third mortgage, a fourth mortgage, whatever, right? In 3 years. So a judgment on a construction lien is retroactive to the point when the work commenced or ended, depending on what the state law says. Okay? Instead of when it was recorded. So construction or mechanic liens, they go back in time to the day that the work began, or even when material was first delivered, if it's a vendor. Okay? So to the day that it began. So they supersede, right, whatever was recorded after the work was done. Got it? Because you got a second mortgage because the house went up in value because I did the work and you did not pay me. So you cannot benefit. That's pretty much the idea behind this. You cannot benefit from something I did without paying me. So construction liens are the only ones that are retroactive. Everything else is based on the order that it was recorded. All right? So it gives you here a quick illustration. I just explained this. So there's a $3,000 lien for work performed in 2017. And then they put it in order. Taxes. First, always. Second is the first mortgage. Then the mechanic lien. Then the second mortgage. Okay? All right. Subordination. Subordination. So what does it mean to be subordinate? Subordinate usually means to be inferior, right? So if you're my subordinate, that means you're my employee, as an example, right? If I'm your leader, right, then you are my subordinate. It's the same thing. So I give instructions, you follow, you are subordinate, you are inferior. Not that you're any less than me, it's just the position that we have in corporations, for instance, right? In terms of liens, it's the same thing. Anybody that comes after, right, is subordinate to the one that came first, right? But there's something called subordination agreement. So a subordination agreement is voluntarily changing positions. So I'm inferior, right? I'm a second mortgage, but I'm telling you, even though I'm second, in the event of foreclosure, I need to be first. Now, why would we do this? Usually we find these in construction. So let's say you bought a house for $100,000, and you know that if you put another 50 into it, right, a few years later, you put another 50,000 into it, you know that the value instead of 100,000 is going to be 200,000 or 300,000 just by putting an extra 50, right? Rehabbing. If you bought it for 100,000 with a mortgage company, and a couple of years later you want to get a second loan for construction purposes, a lot of construction loans clearly state we will lend to you, but because of the risk, we need to be first. This is just as an example, right? We need to be first. So the construction loan or lender, right, is going to communicate with the first lender, and we all the three of us, so both lenders and the homeowner and the borrower, are going to be in agreement that construction lien or the lender, right, is going to be first in the event of foreclosure. Why would the first mortgage agree to this? Why would the first mortgage say, yes, we'll drop down to second position in terms of foreclosure, right? Why would they do this? Simple. Because you have a mortgage of 100,000, which you've been paying over the years, so probably is at 80,000, let's say. You're going to get a second mortgage of 50,000. So worst case scenario, the property is encumbered for 130,000. But if the new value is 300, right? What do we have to lose? Think about it. It's going to benefit everybody, right? Right now, as it is, there's a risk of first mortgage even losing if it goes to foreclosure, right? But if we improve the property $50,000 more, and it increases 100,000 or 200,000 in value, in the event of foreclosure, we all get paid. So it's not a problem. Or also, home equity liens. I mean, there's so many reasons why it could be. But the idea is we will only subordinate or switch positions if everybody benefits. That's what it is. Okay? All right, guys. Superior liens, we already covered that. Taxes are first, whether it's real estate taxes or special assessments, which are public improvements. I'll explain that better in the real estate taxation chapter. So that's chapter 19. But these are superior. Taxes are always first. Junior liens could be the income tax. We already covered that. Corporate tax and so on. Judgments. That means it's a court decision saying that, hey, you owe the money, so pay up, right? And they put a lien against your property to try to recover. Mortgages, you guys already know what it is. You borrowed money, you have to pay it back. But they want to use your property as a collateral, so they secure a lien against the property. Vendor's liens is also called a seller's lien. So when there's a seller financing, the vendor, the person selling, right? Municipal utility liens. So if you fail to pay the water or the sewer bill, they can come after your property. Mechanics liens is for work that was done. All right, so just a brief review of what we just went over. And again, in contrast to other junior liens, the priority of mechanic liens dates from the time when the work began or completed, so retroactive. All right. We got 2 minutes to talk about foreclosure. Or if you let me go, there's just 2 more minutes over. But 2 minutes to talk about foreclosure. What is a mortgage lien foreclosure? There's judicial, non-judicial foreclosure, strict, and deed in lieu. All right? So all liens, as you guys already know, can be enforced by a sale, right? You owe me money. If you don't pay me, I'm going to force the sale of the property, right? We know this. Now, depending on the state that you're in, there's either a judicial or non-judicial foreclosure. So we're going to focus on these two. Strict foreclosure, I'll talk about it briefly, but you need to know these two. That depends on the state that you're in. So, here you go. Judicial foreclosure, that means you're in a state that goes to court. Non-judicial foreclosure, you're in a state that skips or bypasses court. In a judicial foreclosure, in both of them, they accelerate the debt. So they ask for, okay, you defaulted on $6,000, so 3 months, right? But we want $240,000, which is the balance on the mortgage. That's what acceleration is. So when they put an action against you, they're asking for the balance. Because if you defaulted 3 months, what are the chances of you being able to recover? That's how they see it. So they ask for the balance. Now, in the judicial state, they take you to a foreclosure lawsuit, which could take anywhere between 1 year to 3 years. Sometimes even more, but this is the average. Okay? In a non-judicial state, they skip the whole thing, and it takes roughly 3 months from, hey, we're going to take action, to, hey, we scheduled the auction. Okay? So here's 3 years, then schedule the auction. They give you a notice, maybe here another 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days. And then the sale happens. Once the sale happens, in both of these, they can take an action against you for the balance on the loan. It's called deficiency. Okay? So if whatever we recovered in the sale was not enough, we can sue you for the difference. All right? You guys good so far? Again, judicial, we go through a foreclosure suit. Non-judicial, we bypass, so it's way faster for the bank to recover their money. Okay? In a strict foreclosure, it's similar to judicial. The difference is instead of a sale to the general public, they give the title to the lender directly. Not many states have that. Okay? So again, judicial foreclosure, that means we're in a state that has a mortgage agreement. They accelerate the loan and ask for all sums due on the loan to be payable immediately. So they ask for the full amount. If the borrower does not pay off in full, the lender then files a lawsuit naming the borrower as a defendant, and the suit then asks the court to terminate the defendant's interest on the property, so to kick him out, right? Order the property to be sold publicly to the highest bidder, and order the proceeds of the sale to be applied to the debt. So the lender cannot profit. The lender cannot profit, but they can get paid off. Okay? One more thing that's notable to mention, and then I kind of let you guys go, is lis pendens. Lis pendens is a public notice. It's not a lien, okay? It's not a lien. It's a public notice, okay? By the way, this is not alien. It's a lien. So it's not a lien, okay? It's a public notice. So lis pendens, lis means lawsuit, pendens means pending. So it's a public notice that's placed on public records or land records to let the world know, hey, there's a lawsuit happening in court that might affect your interest in the property. So if anybody's willing to buy the property, they will see this there and see, oh, wait a minute, I cannot buy your property until that's resolved in court. So literally it's giving a notice to everyone that there's a lawsuit pending, and if they have any interest, they can either wait or buy the property with a lawsuit. All right? And that's pretty much it. Okay, just this right here, right of redemption. Every state has different laws, so we'll talk about this when we get to the actual state law. But every state has different laws regarding right of redemption. Redemption is reclaiming the property. What does that mean? If a sale happened today, every state has a rule that says, hey, within the X amount of days after the sale, you have the option, defendant, you have the option to come up with all the money plus legal fees and costs, and you can redeem your property. All right, so every state has a right of redemption, which is to pay off and recover money. Okay. All right, cover this, and that is it. You guys good? Sorry, I gave you an extra 5 minutes. All right, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Make sure you guys are part of the WhatsApp group. You can always ask questions there or share your questions or thoughts there. And you can also send it to me as well. All right, guys? I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. If you join me tonight at 5:30, I'll see you later. If not, I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bye, guys.